Hey, it's Becky, and today we're going to do a quick book organization video. This is what I'm working with. All my books were on the floor because I'd been doing some painting of my office. Some of the books did end up back on the shelves as I was moving things around, but for the most part, we're going to be putting everything back on these shelves. There's 3 large shelves, as you can see. I did initially have like an actual face to camera recording, but it just sounded really bad. So we're re-recording over this with the audio, and this is what we're working with for each of the things. I've been out of the room for a while. I'm not sure what I was doing at the beginning of this video, but we're going to talk about book organization and how you can organize your library too. Okay, so first things first, there's no one-size-fits-all approach to organizing a bookshelf. Whether it's alphabetical, by genre, height, order, or rainbow, as long as you can find your books and you're happy, then it's a great library, you're all good. For my library, I'm probably going to do genre. Well, I'm recording this after, so I know I'm going to be doing by genre because I find that's easiest for me to segment my books if I'm looking for a certain one. Or it's kind of how my mood goes. So sometimes I'm just in the mood to read a fantasy book, but sometimes I'm in the mood for a contemporary, or maybe I'm looking for a non-fiction. And then on top of by genre, I'm also going to do by author and a little bit of by publisher. So I have, and you can see it already on these shelves, I have a lot of books by the same authors, whether that's Tolkien, Terry Brooks, Brandon Sanderson, Diana Gabaldon, everyone else. I have a lot of books by the same author, and previously they weren't all together. So this time they are going to all be together, and I'm also going to try and collate publishers, so books by the same publishers as well, just for my own data senses to see which kind of publishers are publishing the books that I like to read, as it should help me pick out new ones to get for these shelves later. So now we talked more about what I'm doing for my bookshelves, and you can obviously watch me do this in this time lapse. It did take a long time, and I believe in the middle it does skip quite a bit because the camera gave out as it ran out of battery. We're also going to talk about how you can actually organize your bookshelves to kind of give helpful hints and things like that. So first up is the best way to start organizing your bookshelf is always going to be decluttering what books you own. So going through what books you own and which books you know you're never going to read again and don't have any sentimental value. This might be books that you've picked up once and just no longer want to read, or it could be a book you have read and just really heavily disliked. Stop letting them take up space in your house if you for any reason think you're not going to pick it up again. A lot of the books I've got on my shelves are kind of unread ones that I want to read, or they're books that I would most definitely read again at some point if I get the time, as there's quite a lot. Yeah, that should be your first step. Make sure you're getting rid of any books you know you're not going to pick up and are just going to sit wasting on your shelves when someone else might love that book on their shelf instead. The second step is to decide on a system before you start moving stuff around. My issue, I think, doing this was that I didn't decide on a system until I was doing it. And so all the books on the floor were in a really, in no order. So they weren't in genre order, or authors weren't together or anything. It was really I was trying to organize it as I was moving them back on the shelves, and sometimes I'm having to move them from different shelves because they weren't fitting. So yeah, decide a system beforehand. Don't be me. We did talk about it a bit earlier, but these can be many different systems. You can do alphabetical by name, by first or last name for authors. You can do alphabetical by book title, although I'd never recommend that. You can do by genre, which is what I've been doing. You can do by publisher, by spine color. I know everyone loves a good rainbow bookshelf still. And you can also do it by height. So I know some people like to have very clear cut, all the same size paperbacks or hardbacks on their shelves. As you can tell already, I don't have that, but I know some people will do it so that all of their books that are the same height are together, or they're kind of staggered in a step ladder kind of way, I guess. And then after you've decided on a system, then comes excuse the pun, the heavy lifting, as you have to actually get the books onto the shelves in that order. I would personally recommend you do this not like how I did it, where you put everything on the floor and hope for the best, but do it shelf by shelf. So if you know that this middle shelf you wanted to be fantasy, you would start putting the fantasy books on it from the other shelves, and then move the non-fantasy books off it, and then move on to the next shelf, instead of clearing all three double stacked bookshelves that you have in your room and then having to re-put them all back, because this was a long process. As you can see, I'm doing now as well. Do not worry about making sure your system is on across every single bookshelf you own. Your favorites or your favorite author, like this one in the middle, which is a shelf purely for Tolkien books and Lord of the Rings, you can have your favorites on a separate shelf. It doesn't matter if it messes up your system, it will be fine. It looks cute. And you know, when you walk into your room, you know where your favorites are at a quick glance to the shelves. This also leads me right into a nice little segue, which is, think about your library or your bookshelves as how you think about the rest of the room too. If you're a very minimalist person or you're a very maximalist person, then your bookshelves will probably want to match that aesthetic in your house. So if you are looking for a very minimalist or more modern, can I say, look for your bookshelves, probably don't do what I do, which is fill the shelves to the brim. Remember to leave space, whether that's for more books to come later on, or whether it's for flowers, ornaments, bookish gifts and things like that. But basically there's a 2/3 rule. So put 2/3 of the bookshelf or the shelf itself with books, and then in the spaces in between you can add in personal touches, or just leave blank, just to give more of a blank space feel that I know a lot of people do enjoy in their homes. And then last but not least, I also wanted to add in some not bookshelf organization tips, but bookshelf and book upkeep tips. So I'm not very good at following these tips either. This entire video seems to be very hypocritical of me, but one of the biggest upkeep things is to make sure before you start putting the books on, make sure they're all dusted out underneath where the old books were. Make sure it's clean and tidy to reduce dust affecting your books, and also check if there's any mold, mites, or any other case for concern on your bookshelf itself. So make sure it looks kind of the same color it was when you bought it or put it together, just in case it's anything that's going to affect the pages of your books. Most bookshelves are made of wood. Paper is just thinner wood, so it will affect your books if you put it on there. The second one is also, and this is where I'm being a hypocrite, is don't tightly pack all your books, as it can affect the spines. And also try not to put too many books, especially special edition books, in direct sunlight. I can't help it in my room. The big wall I had is right next to the window to the right of the screen, off camera. But that just meant that I've actually moved a lot of my collector's edition books to the middle shelf or the shelf on the left instead of the shelf on the right. So it's not the bookshelf closest to the window. A lot of the books on the one closest to the window are my childhood books. They're the Twilights and New Moons, as well as the Enid Blyton books, which I'm not as precious about maybe getting a little bit sun bleached because they're on that shelf. Then there's also the case of the bookshelves themselves. So I have a lot of books, and I very happily have not got warped bookshelves yet in this flat. In previous homes that I've lived in, whether it was at my family home or in a previous flat, I've definitely had the issue where I've put too many books on a shelf and it started to bend inwards. One of the key things you can do, especially with like Billy bookcases, is if you see the wood starting to bow in the middle, for most of the shelves apart from the middle shelf, you can flip the shelves round and let them kind of bend back with the weight of the books. But the best case to do is just to try not to overload it. So one of the ones for this is my Tolkien shelf. There's so many hardback books that I've got and collector's editions, which are quite hefty reads. It is on the middle shelf, which is one of the stronger shelves in the Billy bookcase, but I have not filled it too much. That's probably the only shelf that will never be completely double stacked like many of the other shelves, just because I know it's gonna start doing it at some point. So I've moved some of the Tolkien books to the shelf on the left just to kind of even it out so it's not too heavy for it. So yeah, just always keep an eye out for that as well, because you don't want to have to like break your shelf either and then buy a whole new one. So yeah, that's all my quick tips about book organization and watching me fail spectacularly of getting this done, because I did not completely finish it in the day, and I think I ended up throwing some things on these shelves as they are. If you do want to see a bookshelf tour, do let me know, because I've been thinking about making one. I just need someone to tell me to. But thank you so much for watching. I hope these hints were a little bit helpful if you're going through your organisation soon. And I really hope to see you again in another video soon.